I can start to see my colleagues who are the next presenters starting to turn on their screens. Thank you for being so timely and conscientious. I hope you all managed to get some sort of refreshment as we go into the third and our final session, which is on blue economy opportunities in East Asia. So we've spoken a lot about the EU and broaden that out to think about global initiatives, and we're back again in this session in East Asia. So we have three speakers. We have Ishihara, we have Higuchi, and Nakamura. And actually, I'm looking forward to all the presentations, but I'm particularly looking forward to the next presentation by Ishihara, because a number of people have asked very pertinent questions around fishers and their role in MSP in the questions. And yeah, so let's hear from your perspective. Over to you.
Thank you very much. So let me share the screen now. Can you see my screen? Is it okay?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay? Good. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for attending this workshop, and thank you, Oscar and Stefan, for organizing this workshop. My name is Hiro Ishihara from the University of Tokyo. I'll be presenting a case of marine spatial planning at the very local level. So I think the scale is very different from the previous presenters, but it's a marine spatial planning or marine protected area implemented by Fishery Cooperative Association. And you might be wondering how fishermen themselves can regulate their own fishing or plan for their marine or ecosystem. So let's start. So this is the content of my presentation today. In section 1, I'll be giving you an overview of marine protected areas in Japan. And then I will move on to the case study of lobster fisheries in central part of Japan and how fishermen are designing their own no-take zone by utilizing their traditional ecological knowledge. So according to Yagi 2010, there are 1,161 marine protected areas or MPAs in Japan. And they can be classified into 6 different types, out of which 5 are legally binding one. The 6th type is the only MPA which is self-imposed by the Fisheries Cooperative Association, or FCAs in short. FCAs plays a key role in coastal fishery management in Japan. If you are a fisherman operating in the coastal fisheries, you must be a member of FCA at your local area. These FCAs design fisheries management rules for specific fish species or fishing gear types. According to Yagi 2010, 33% or around 380 MPAs out of 1,161 are self-imposed no-take zone. So from this number, we can see that the self-imposed no-take zone plays a pivotal role in terms of marine conservation in Japan. So let's look into how these self-imposed no-take zones are managed. As a case study, I am going to look into the lobster fishery in Wagyu district, Shima City, Mie, Japan. So a little bit about the background. So this Wagyu district, where the lobster fisheries are conducted, is located in central part of Japan between Tokyo and Osaka. Lobster fisheries are currently one of the most lucrative fisheries in the district, as lobster are highly priced commodity. Mie Prefecture is one of the, where Wagyu is located, is one of the top producers in Japan. And currently the landing priced at around 2 billion or 2 million yen annually. This lucrative fisheries is also marked with high uncertainty. Although the lobster itself is very sedentary, its larvae travel down to Mariana Islands in South Pacific and comes back to Japanese coast with the ocean current. So whether the lobster can settle in the coast of Japan is highly dependent on the path of this current. So how does the FCA manage self-imposed no-take zone in this highly lucrative but highly uncertain fisheries? So let's look into the management system itself. Okay, so in this district, the FCA, the Fisheries Cooperative Association, divides their fishing ground into two. In this presentation, we will call this as Fishing Ground A and Fishing Ground B. Fishing Ground A is used during the first half of the fishing season between October and December, while Fishing Ground B is used during the second half of the fishing season between January and April. In these two fishing grounds, the fisherman operates in a two contrasting operation mode. One that is highly coordinated, which we term as a group operation mode, and the other that is highly competitive, which we term as individual operation mode. Because the fishermen divides the fishing ground into two, while using one, they prohibit using the other, it can be considered as seasonal no-take zone. So let's look into the operation mode. In Fishing Ground A, which is used during October to December, fishermen operate in group operation mode. 26 lobster fishermen in the district are divided into 5 groups, which is called hama in Japanese, or beaches, if I translate. Every morning, the fishermen gather together to decide which group goes out to which fishing ground. Then they mount together in a small boat, one per group. These are very small boats with a very small engine as well. They only use 2 nets per fisherman, which is quite different from the individual operation mode where people can use 9 nets per each. During the group operation mode, the fishermen also share their revenue, guaranteeing an equal income among all 26 fishermen. This group operation mode can be considered as highly coordinated fisheries that suppresses competition among the fishermen as they coordinate the fishing ground and share their revenue. Contrary to the group operation mode, in Fishing Ground B, fishermen conduct highly competitive fishing. During this season, 26 lobster fishermen stop operating in groups and operates individually. During the season, they use their own boat, which is often larger and faster, like these. And And as for the fishing ground, it is not coordinated, rather first comes first served principle applies. Those fishermen who have large boats can share their, can get to the most productive fishing grounds. So to this end, during this fishing operation mode, the fisherman does not share their revenue as it is in group operation mode. Here we can see 2 contrasting operation modes that are implemented in 2 different fishing grounds. But why do fishermen operate in 2 different modes in 2 different fishing grounds? So the short answer to this is that fishermen know that the fishing ground A is more productive than fishing ground B. As they know this fact, they conduct rather coordinated fishing in fishing ground A to avoid overfishing while satisfying their desire to compete in the fishing ground B. For example, if we look at the landing per net throughout the fishing season, we can see how fishing ground A is productive. In this figure, the vertical axis shows the landing volume in kg per net, and the horizontal axis shows the number of days after the start of fishing season. The fishermen shipped from fishing ground A to B around end of December, which means around 100 days after the start of the season. Figure shows that the sudden drop in the landing per net around 100 days mark. The fishermen operates in group mode to suppress competition while they are using a highly productive fishing ground A. However, while they are using the less productive fishing ground B, they operate in individual mode, satisfying their appetite to compete. In concluding, I would like to mention that because these MPAs or no-take zones are managed by local FCAs by the fishermen themselves, they can manage to fit the local ecosystem. It is the fisherman who has the intimate knowledge of their ecosystem and fishing grounds. This type of knowledge is often termed as a traditional ecological knowledge. And in our case, they utilize their traditional ecological knowledge to design seasonal no-take zone or fishing ground A and B. And by operating in two different modes, the fishermen are able to suppress their urge to overfish while they're using a productive fishing ground A, while competing in the productive, less productive fishing ground B, satisfying their need to compete. This is not to say that the scientific knowledge is not necessary for marine spatial planning or MPAs designing the MPA. Rather, I want to emphasize that in marine spatial planning or MPA designing, especially when the fishermen are involved, it is critical to take into account the fishermen's traditional ecological knowledge and to co-create new knowledge in order to manage the local ecosystem in an effective and sustainable manner. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Sorry, just pressing buttons to bring myself back on. Thank you so much for that really informative presentation. There's a lot to think about there. I'd probably be following up with you in the future, but in the interest of time, we're now going to move from fishers and local knowledge to Japanese offshore wind energy law. And in a way, this is a little bit of poetic justice because of the two sectors that are often pitted together. It's the fishers and the offshore wind. But let's go straight to Higuchi, and thank you for your presentation in advance. If you can just, Ika, if you can just share.
Am I audible?
You are audible. We cannot see your presentation yet.
Oh, sorry.
Take your time.
Now I start to share my screen.
Yeah. Okay, we've got liftoff. Great. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Okay, hi. I'm an Eka Higuchi, working at Koike University. I'm working at the university in Preston in a very coastal area. Our prefecture, Yamagata Prefecture, has already have lots of windmills alongside of the coast. So the problems about the offshore wind power energy is a very close problem for us. Today, I'm presenting Japan's new offshore wind power legal system could be considered as marine spatial planning. So at the beginning of this workshop, the Mr. Imada Katsuhiko, director of the MOFA, says that the officially Japanese government officially thinks that the MSP is totally new for them. So I think I could show that the Japan's already have some MSP like law and the policies. Today, this is at a glance to this presentation. I use these two evaluation tools, such as the academic criteria and the guidelines developed by UNESCO IOC. And this evaluation concludes that Japan's new offshore wind power system is likely to meet the requirement of the MSP quite well. However, there will be some problems. For example, the opportunities for stakeholder participation are slightly limited when we consider about the UNESCO IOC's guidelines. In addition to this, some domestic scholars already pointed out that the Japanese UMURE process lacks the viewpoint of the socio-economic impact. So now I would like to show you how such a conclusion can be drawn. First, I'd like to show you how such a conclusion, new offshore wind power legal framework in Japan. Before 2019, there was no framework to coordinate of CUs, especially in the EEZ, especially for wind power energy installation. So therefore, new act legislated, especially for wind power energy installation in EEZ. This act has long named the Act on the Utilization of Maritime Resources for Renewable Energy. So let me call it UMRE, UMRE, UMRE Act. This UMRE has a comprehensive system that includes everything from the planning to review. It consists 4 stages, ABCD, A, planning process with government, and B, selection and designation of the area suitable for wind power generation, and C, it is the operator selections, and D, it is the implementation stage by the operator, each operator. Especially this process D, stage D, is subject to review by government and stakeholders. Next, there are some names, the types of the documents that we call the UMRE processes. As you can see, based on the UMRE Act itself, there are 1 basic policy and 2 guidelines. In addition to this, this UMRE process is designed to automatically incorporate the process of operators EIA, environmental impact assessment. So from the next slide, I start to evaluate the UMRE process, and I use the word UMRE process. So it means that I subject to these 5 kinds of documents. So now here are the academic evaluation. It is the criteria presented by Corey et al. In their paper at 2013, and they use these 5 kinds of criteria. The first requirement is about the representativeness in multiple candidates. So today I only deal with 1 example, the UMRE process. So I think that it was not relevant for today's evaluation. So it's grayed out. So when we look at the other requirements, 1, 2, 3, and 5, the UMRE Act by itself, seems to meet all of the requirements by the Corey and all presented. So again, from what we have seen in this slide, UMRE seems to meet criteria for MSP. Next, not records the next one. This is the MSP guideline developed by UNESCO IOC. This guideline has 10 symbolic steps to understanding and promoting the marine spatial planning. So some steps are further subdivided. Please look at the step 3 and 5. Some steps subdivided for several small steps. So let me explain this table. On the left side, it listed the steps of UNESCO IOC guideline, and the right side, it describes the UMRE documents. At first, please ignore the blue and red colors, and please look at the circles. If each document on the right side ensures the guideline step listed on the left, I circled them. From here to here, the UMRE Act to the EIA Act, if it circled at least one of the 5 documents, then we could say that the step is ensured in the entire UMRE processes, because UMRE process has these 5 kinds of documents in their system. So as you can see, 10 steps of the provided by UNESCO IOC. All of the steps have at least 2 circles. So therefore, regarding the 10 steps of the UNESCO IOC guideline, the UMRE circle seems to satisfy all the steps. Next, however, turn your attention to the color blue and red. On the steps in the UNESCO guideline, blue color indicates the needs for stakeholder participation in the guideline. The right shows the relevance in UMRE processes. So the items in red, shown in red on the right side, mean that stakeholder participation is not ensured in the UMRE processes, even though they're originally required in the UNESCO IOC guideline. So you can specifically you can see that process 3 and 5, pre-planning process and the defining existing conditions and mapping areas process. There are the horizontal rows in red, horizontal rows all in red. So it means that in these steps, it's not firmly structured to allow for stakeholder participation. Yes, now let's talk about the next point raised from within Japan. About this UMRE process, Mr. Akeda pointed out in his articles this year that the UMRE processes lacked the socio-economic impact, such as economic impact for Asia. And this is my future paper, but I also I'd like to also point out that UMRE Act itself has the biased assumption of fishermen as stakeholders. So it could be said that this point not necessarily connected to the MSP requirements, but they show that seemingly well-designed new act still have room for improvement. So therefore, we could conclude that the UMRE process is up to MSP or MSP-like processes. But meanwhile, we found that there still are the challenges and the rooms for improvement regarding stakeholder participation and so on. It's all my presentation. MSP is a very useful tool. I think there is a difference between the intentional use of useful tools and the unawareness of its use. So why not develop the UMRE as an MSP? Let's conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for a fascinating presentation and bringing us to right on time to our last but not least speaker, who is Takehiro, and he is going to speak about MSP approaches underpinned by the ecosystem approach and sustainable blue economy. So bringing it all together in this session, really. Over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm not able to just share the screen. Higuchi-san, please. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Oscar, are you sharing?
Yeah, I'm sharing.
Oh, you're sharing. Go ahead.
Oh, can you see my screen?
Yes, if you could make it full screen, that would be great.
Just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the full screen? Most probably not. Just a moment.
No problem.
Can you see the full screen?
There we go. Great. It's a little small on my screen, but is it okay for everybody else? Stephen and Oscar?
It looks okay on my screen now.
Okay, perfect. So without further ado, I'm turning over to you, Takehiro.
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you very much for pronouncing my name properly. I'm from the United Nations Environment Program, headquarters in Nairobi, and I'm connected from Nairobi today. And I'm the chief of the Marine and Coastal Unit in UNEP. And today I just would like to really discuss marine spatial planning underpinned by ecosystem approach and the blue economy. Many of the previous speakers talk about the ecosystem-based approach as a kind of really main principle for the marine spatial planning. And then I just would like to really address that issue in my presentation. And earlier, the UNEP analyzed the marine spatial planning and the integrated coastal zone management, how to use the planning tools to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 14.1 on pollution and the SDG 14.2 on the ecosystems. Both of them we consider to be the really important the planning tool, spatial planning tools. As Professor Wakita indicated, that we also consider integrated coastal zone management or integrated coastal management as a kind of really important spatial tool. And then many of the countries also operating marine spatial planning under the wider integrated coastal zone management framework. And the main difference is ICZM is including the terrestrial part of the coastal areas, and then talking about the interaction between the land-based activities and the coastal ecosystems. And then I also agree with Mr. Imada's first statement about the linkage with the SDG properly. And in order to really address this issue of the ecosystem approach or using the MSP for the ecosystem purposes, we try to really discuss about the ecosystem, the concept. Ecosystem concept is the ecological systems, including biotic and abiotic elements, which are interacting to each other. Ecosystem approach certainly is just a moment. The conceptual framework incorporating human activities at the sustainable levels as an accepted element of the ecosystem functioning, and also strategy for the integrated management of land, water, and the living resources that provide sustainable delivery of the ecosystem services. So there are two key issues that the human activities are part of the ecosystems, and then also ecosystem services are providing benefits for human activities within the ecosystems. So there's the ecosystem services linked with different human life and the human activities and the human well-beings. So we certainly consider this ecosystem services as an important concept to be introduced into the marine spatial planning. Human activities and the ecosystems. Yes, there are quite a number of human activities within the ecosystems. And then there's the human activities versus different pressures to the different elements of the ecosystem functions, like water quality or the safeguarding the biodiversity, and so and so and so. So there's a kind of really complicated relationship between the human activities and the ecosystem functions and the pressure to the ecosystems. And the further land-based activities, such as coastal development and any other activities also affecting marine ecosystem functions. In this publication, we are talking about several steps to really incorporate ecosystem approach into the marine spatial planning. And just kind of really some summary from this publication. We also try to really advocate that identifying ecosystem scale for the marine spatial planning, carry out integrated ecosystem assessment, and also assessment and evaluation of ecosystem services. Some previous speaker talked about natural capitals, and then stakeholder who are really relying on the ecosystem services and which activities are really impacting ecosystem functions. The roles and responsibility, MSP governance or coordination committee to be presented by all stakeholders associated with all ecosystem services. And then many people talked about the MPAs as a kind of really ecosystem approach tool. And then in terms of other effective area-based conservation measures, including the fisheries closures or fisheries-related or restricted areas that may also consider to be a kind of really important ecosystem-based conservation measures. And then several other steps we indicated in this publication. And I think there was a quite strong discussion about the blue economy versus marine spatial planning. And then if we really talk about the ecosystem-based marine spatial planning, which has a natural linkage with the blue economy. For example, ecosystem approach includes multiple economic sectors relying on ecosystem services and also impacting ecosystem functions, requiring almost all the marine sectors to be really associated with this marine spatial planning, and then linking with their sectoral policies and the development. MSP can be also used for coordinating the marine space using uses associated with ecosystem services sector interest, serving as a mechanism for cross-sectoral and sustainable blue economy. Ecosystem-based MSP, if trade-offs are properly analyzed, can promote multiple use of space and mitigating competing use of the marine space. Ecosystem-based MSP can bring three pillars of sustainable development together and then contributing to sustainable development, not only the economic benefits, not only social benefits, and not only environmental benefits. I just would like to really introduce the two case studies included in this publication. One, regional case studies from Europe, and another case studies at the national level from the Philippines. The regional case study is the Baltic Sea, the Baltic Marine Environment Protection Commission, the HELCOM, established vision together with the vision and the strategies around the Baltic Seas, established a working group on MSP at the sea scale, sea basin scale, meaning the whole Baltic Sea. HELCOM contracting parties agreed to jointly develop by 2010, as well as test and apply and evaluate by 2012 in cooperation with other relevant international bodies, broad-scale, cross-sectoral marine spatial planning principles based on the ecosystem approach. These principles are already published in 2010. And also there was the guidelines established for the implementation of the ecosystem-based approach in the Baltic Sea area in 2016. They spent almost 5 years to really establish this, the guidelines for the ecosystem approach. And then in introducing this ecosystem approach, the HELCOM already established the cumulative impact assessment modalities and then socioeconomic analysis guidelines already included in this the process. And then they set the common regional goals and marine spatial plans in the Baltic countries. And the important thing is that this is not the single sector, the marine spatial planning. They also try to really include the multiple sectors in this the MSP initiatives, and then linking with EU Marine Spatial Planning Directive, as EU representative indicated. There's another case study from the Philippines at the national level or local level. There was a project funded by the USAID across 6 municipalities, with each having 5 to 6 local sites, and they're dealing with 15 kilometers of the coastline, addressing partially land-based marine pollution and the coastal development in terrestrial side. Biodiversity conservation and then tourism development are kind of really main conflicting areas, and then biophysical data used for Marksan conservation planning model based on the ecosystem status. Integrated coastal management plans reviewed biannually. And the good thing about the important thing is this initiative is a community participation in developing ICZM plan, and ownership was very clear that the reside with municipalities, and then that also led to the successful implementation of localized marine spatial plans, including the established marine protected area, despite a lot of pressure from the tourism sector and the fishery sector, as well as the large population growth in the areas. So those are kind of really 2 case studies I just would like to introduce today, because the theme for today is MSP for East Asia and Europe. And then there are several materials published by UNEP in this list. And the last one is not the UNEP publication, delivering ecosystem-based maritime spatial planning in practice, assessing the integration of the ecosystem-based approach into UK and Ireland marine spatial plans. It's a WWF publication, but the author is our collaborating center, the UNEP World Conservation Monitoring Center. Thank you.
That's really wonderful, and thank you for bringing us in on time. I'm now going to, again, the question. There's been a number of questions, and we have a few minutes before I get to wrap up. One of them has been answered, because I do want to, it was the one about it is, which means that has disappeared off my screen. It was the one to Issy Tahiro about the potential for cooperation that you outlined, and the person asked about it being for the rest of Japan, but actually, just as we have an international theme today, I'm thinking, what's your insight or on how what you presented could be used internationally? It was a very, very powerful example.
Okay, so today, due to time constraint, I did not say the negative side of group operation or coordinated fishery. So there are a lot of actually although in the district there's only 26 fishermen, which is a very small number, and it's rather homogeneous. Well, they are homogeneous in terms of population and ethnicity and so forth. But despite the fact there are some dissatisfaction, and especially for the younger generation, they want more income, right, than the empty nesters. And empty nesters, they already have pensions, so they don't have to earn that much money. So for them, group operation, dividing the income equally during the group operation, the income level is not enough. So for younger generation, they would like to have more money. So for them, they feel it's a kind of burden as well. And especially the older generation, they're not like, you know, very young and be able to help. They feel that the older generation is rather a burden to them, and they need to help them in when they go for a group operation. So, so in order for these group operation mode to function, you need to have a small number of fishermen, and they need to have homogeneous population or homogeneous interest in terms of income level and different social conditions. So I don't think it's applicable to all around the world. But if there is a condition that is, I mean, like if you have a small number of fishermen and homogeneous interest, then that might be applicable. But I think one of the reasons that they do group operation mode and competitive individual operation mode is that in order to satisfy different needs, they need to have individual freedom to do whatever they need to do in terms of getting the income. So there are a couple of cases in Japan where they do a group operation. In Japanese, it's called puruse, but it's often combined with individual operation mode where they can compete with each other and have the freedom to gain the income they need. So I think there are certain social conditions that you need to meet in terms of doing this type of operation.
Great. Well, I just like to say, I think there's social conditions underpin everything. It's not just the example you give. I'm going to, this question is something that we always maybe ask as academics. I've asked many policymakers and people on the ground. And it goes to Takahiro. It's really about thinking about what are the particular ecosystem services that might be important for Japan to consider in MSP initiatives. This is something I think we're constantly wrestling with, because as humans, we think, well, we might not note this, but we're always thinking about trade-offs. But for you, Takahiro, and knowing the landscape or the oceanscape of Japan, is there certain things that you think that would be particularly important?
Thank you very much. I think the previous speakers already answered the question, because there are so many presentations from Japan, and then many of the presentations touching upon the ecosystem services for fisheries, the ecosystems, the functioning as a habitat for fisheries, and then other ecosystem services related to the marine energy, producing marine energy. There are two kind of really major presentations today related to two marine ecosystem services related to the fisheries and marine energies. So I can really see that those are kind of really priority issues that Japan is really considering. And then according to the Japanese law and then Japanese current development of the systems for marine spatial planning and the blue economy, I can really see those are now currently being picked up as the main ecosystem services for human benefits. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So if it's okay with Stephen and Oscar, I'm going to start drawing the workshop to a close. It's getting late in Japan, and actually it's just been so stimulating that there's loads of things bouncing around in my mind. So I need to go and think about them a little bit more. But a number of key points from me from listening to everybody and engaging with the questions. So I have attended many conferences on marine spatial planning, certainly not as many as Stephen, but definitely many conferences on marine spatial planning, and of late the blue economy. And I'd just like to say I've never seen so many that have, there's never been one that has been so positive. And not just from one side, or not just from our Japanese looking to the future, but even our colleagues in the EU speaking about MSP in such a positive way and starting to show real development. And I don't think this is actually just because time has passed and it's just become old hat and it's become acceptable to people and it's no longer as derisive. I think the acceptability is because of that really hard work that has been going on and has been demonstrated by a number of the presentations to really actively engage meaningfully with all the stakeholders and take that heat out of what the way of thinking of things as trade-offs, conflicts, etc. So I think in a way that MSP has lost its heat, but that means that it can actually go forward. And we're seeing examples of people working with the communities, thinking to the future, thinking about data, thinking about institutions, and also not just thinking about their own areas, but the marine environment more broadly. I felt the question around Africa was incredibly pertinent. It's also amazing to see how MSP is really being framed as an opportunity for our Japanese colleagues. Maybe in Europe the fight was hard won to get it to that stage, but really the appetite for moving towards a more sustainable development of the marine of our marine resource, our most important resource, is really, really heartening. And one of the final things I'd like to say, and this is probably because I am an economist, but also thinking as a scientist and the need to inform evidence-based policy, is that what I'd really like to say to our Japanese colleagues is you're at the cusp of setting up these marine spatial plans. Can I really encourage you to go out and take baseline data on everything from the actual ecosystem to the income of fishers, of sea, of the other sectors, the health and well-being of coastal communities, and monitor this regularly, not just looking at the high macro level. Because one of the things we have failed to do, and just trying to catch up on in Europe, is actively looking at our successes. We can't measure them. We don't have that baseline data. We have proxies and we can assume, but having the resources and the information to say, actually, the health of X amount of people has been improved by X amount is really, really important, because at the end of the day, we're all working with policymakers, and policymakers need to be able to sell this to their constituencies, to their countries. So a call for more for you guys to our Japanese colleagues to get in there first and collect this baseline data, both the environmental but also the social, cultural and health. So that's all I'd like to say. Again, thank you for an incredibly stimulating morning going into afternoon for me. must say I'm absolutely starving, but I'm going to now hand over to our esteemed leader, Stephen, to just wrap it all up. And I'd like to take a moment to really thank both Stephen and Oscar for putting this together. It's not often that we get to have such a workshop where you have so many, where we can come together and really think about these projects on a truly international level. So thank you very much from me, and I know all the speakers and the listeners.
Thank you so much, Karen. Really appreciate those closing reflections of yours. If I could perhaps just add one of my own, just still got a few minutes left, if you don't mind bearing with us. I think what's been really interesting as well is to see the way in which MSP is evolving, so particularly looking at the European context, with the shift to the sustainable blue economy, for example, and the way in which MSP can support that. A much more integrative approach, so rather than thinking in terms of simplistic zoning, this can happen here, that can happen there, thinking about how different uses can work together. And at the same time, bringing in all these social and economic considerations as well. So I suppose, another message that we might want to send out from a European context to our colleagues in Japan and more widely as well in East and Southeast Asia is, to see if other things can be learned as well, where experience is gaining, and to build upon the capital that's already there. So, for example, the very interesting, social perspective that Hero is bringing to us from a fishing point of view is something that can be understood right from the start. So I think, again, it just remains to thank everybody. I mean, we've had a fantastic tour this morning in 3 short hours. We started in Southeast and Eastern Asia generally with Larry, and then looked a little bit more at what's happening in the Japanese context with Tomohiko and Kazumi. And then we switched continents to Europe, and we heard from Juan and Riku and Ivana about some of the current trends in Europe. And then we nipped back again east to hearing about initiatives from Hero and Eka, and also Takehiro giving us again a very broad context from a UNEP point of view. So it's been fantastic, switching between continents in this short time. I really want to thank all the panelists for contributing so fully to this event. And also, once again, thank you to Karen for leading us through this, and for Oscar for working behind the scenes on the technical side. And the panelists have been in touch with him. Everybody else as well needs to be aware that he's been working so hard. And once again, many thanks to our colleagues in the government of Japan, and particularly at the Embassy of Japan in the UK for supporting this and helping us to put all this together. As I said right at the outset, we have been recording this event, so we will make the recording available, particularly for people who may still be, not very sociable time zone, so you can catch up at your leisure on today's event. And we will follow on with a report, so we invite the panelists to respond more fully to questions that have been put, and then we will circulate a report from this. And hopefully this is just the beginning of wider international collaboration in seeing how maritime spatial planning can support blue economy initiatives in our different contexts. And I think that brings us almost to the top of the hour. For some of us, it's time to go off and eat, others even to go and rest for the night. But whatever you're about to do, I wish you a very good rest of the day, rest of the week, and hopefully we will meet again before too long in one way or another.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.